Hey, everybody. It is so good to see you here tonight. My husband, Jeremy, is already noting what is absolutely my favorite part of these calls is just seeing all of you. There are already 3,000 people on this call, and people are going to continue to be filtering in. So, for anyone in the media or anyone in your life who says, where is everyone speaking up for democracy? Tell them about this call, okay? On a weeknight. It's absolutely incredible. And this is the energy I am seeing. All of us at Red Wine and Blue are seeing on the ground, online, in all the ways every night. If you haven't been with us here before at Red Wine and Blue, you are welcome here. And if you've been here many, many times before, help me welcome everyone else, okay? My name is Katie Paris. I'm the founder of Red Wine and Blue. And I don't usually have someone else sitting right next to me on these Zoom calls, but this is my husband, Jeremy.
Hi.
And because we're talking about voting rights tonight, I invited him along because Jeremy has spent his entire career working on voting rights issues. When we used to live in DC, we've lived in Ohio for about a dozen years now. Before that, we lived in DC, and he was chief counsel to the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And that is the committee in the US Senate that really focuses on voting rights. He also worked on Supreme Court nominations, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Anyway, so when I told you I was doing voting rights, did you know that the next thing I was going to say was, can you come?
Well, first of all, whenever you say let's have a date, I say yes.
Aw.
Second of all, we're going to pretend this is the part of the bit where we pretend this is just what we'd be talking about if we were hanging around
Yeah, we would probably
without
be
the
talking
cameras
about
on.
this anyway.
Right. So we're just putting a camera on it. Also, the song's a bop. So the Red Wine and Blue song. How can you not dance along?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good
So
for
good start to the
the
dance.
kids know it too. We play it in the car sometimes. Yeah.
They do know it.
Okay, but we are here tonight in particular to be talking about voting rights because of something that many of you have been hearing about in your group chats and have been coming into the Red Wine and Blue Facebook groups across our social media platforms asking about. I was just speaking at a local event here in Ohio. It came up over the weekend. You want to know about the SAVE Act. You want to know, is this for real? Is what I'm hearing online true? Sadly, a lot of what you're hearing in your group chat is true, but we tonight are going to make sure that you get the facts, and we're going to make sure that you leave here feeling really confident to share the facts because we need to make sure that everybody knows about the SAVE Act. And we're also going to make sure that you feel really confident to call your reps to make sure that they know how you feel about the SAVE Act. So we are super excited to have on here tonight your friend, and I like to call her my friend too, Wendy Weiser from the Brennan Center, which is like one of the leading national civil rights organizations. You've worked with her for a long time, right?
Yeah. You said you were going to bring me out as an expert, and then you brought on the person that I call as an expert. So I feel like I got to show up for this first.
This is Red Wine and Blue. We got to bring
That's right.
bring the high
That's right.
here. So, okay. And then we're also going to be having on two of the congresswomen who are leading the fight against the SAVE Act. Representatives Fernandez and Sykes, of course, Amelia Sykes, who represents an area.
Our friend and neighbor.
Yeah, not far from here. She isn't our representative, but basically one district over. And then Representative Fernandez is the chair of the Women's Caucus and really showing so much leadership on the SAVE Act. Because as we'll talk about, there's really some impacts on women that are unbelievably true, but we'll get into that more with Wendy. The reason why I wanted to start the conversation with you is to talk about, you have worked on voting rights for a long time, and of course you're a student of history, American history, and so like this whole, and what I really
She's trying hard not to say I'm a nerd, but thank you.
I'm too. It's okay.
You're okay.
So but what I want to say is like put the SAVE Act in context, that this isn't just a random piece of legislation that dropped out of the sky. This is part of a years-long effort at voter suppression. The Supreme Court has been part of this project. Our state legislatures have been part of this project. Politicians trying to gerrymander where they draw their district lines so that they can get reelected are part of this project at voter suppression. And so I just want to know, like, why do politicians who are pushing this stuff, why are they so obsessed with making it harder to vote? And why do you think this in particular, like such an assault on our right to vote, is happening now?
First of all, the SAVE Act is bad. Let's just Just get that out there. It's the technical term is bad. It's going to stop a lot of people, many millions of people from being able to vote. It's going to make it harder for them to vote. It won't stop you from voting, make it harder for you to register and vote. Why now? I tend to think that when people's agenda is popular, when you're trying to do things that people like, that it's fine. It's easy. Come out and vote. Come out and support it. I think the why it's happening is that there are people and people in charge of our government that really want to make it harder to vote. They want fewer people participating in our democracy and voting. I think full stop. But you asked me about history, and I sort of go way back, and there's this wonderful story of the country. And when I worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee, we were reauthorizing the Voting Rights Act in 2006. And at that
So
time,
this is like the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
yeah,
Is up
the
for
landmark,
reauthorization.
the
Okay.
landmark Civil Rights Act, which, and the story goes back, but when we're reauthorizing this, it passed 98-0 in the US Senate. Almost every House member voted for it. George W. Bush, a Republican president, signed it into law
98-0 in favor of voting rights.
in favor of voting rights in
And this-
2006, which wasn't
That's like less
that
than
long
20
ago.
years ago. Yeah.
Right. But there's this longer story of America, which is we start with the founders, and then the promise of democracy grows and grows. We have to fight a civil war, and then we have the 14th and 15th Amendments, which mean that people, you can't be stopped from voting based on your race, your religion, and then we have suffrage, and in 1920, and women can vote, and then we have to fight and fight and fight. We fight in the civil rights era to make good on the promises of those Civil War amendments, and make sure that everybody can vote. And then we have automatic voter registration. We try to modernize how people can register to vote. And it's great. More people get to participate. More people get a say. And you have the story of expansion until you run into this recent Supreme Court and Chief Justice John Roberts. And full stop, crank the car, make it harder. They strip out core provisions of the Voting Rights Act, which Congress had just reauthorized unanimously. And we're seeing now, this is part of this progression. Wendy Weiser, who's going to be on later, has been one of the people leading a fight to restore the Voting Rights Act and establish national voting standards. That's what we should be talking about.
Yeah.
How do we add more people? The SAVE Act is part of this idea of making it harder to vote, and thinking that I don't know if the plan is that they think it'll only affect other people, not them, but what we're going to hear about tonight is the SAVE Act is going to stop millions of people voting, millions of women. If you're a woman and you've changed your name and it doesn't match your birth certificate, also it's going to be hard to register to vote.
Yeah. Okay, one thing that all right, so we understand that this threat has been coming for a long time. It used to be the arc of history was really expanding the right to vote, making the vote more accessible. And now we see this clamping down of saying, well, how about we just don't care if our agenda is popular and instead just narrow the number of people who can actually vote. Okay, and this is happening from the Supreme Court to Congress, all the way down to what we're seeing in state legislatures. We know that's happening in Ohio and so many other states as well. Now, what you hear over and over from those who are pushing for this is they go, oh, well, we have to do this. We've got to cut down on voter fraud. We have undocumented immigrants illegally voting. So who couldn't be for this? We want to just protect the integrity of every American voter. Can you help us debunk this myth?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a pretext. You mentioned voter fraud, and for years, voter fraud was used as the justification for laws at the state level and the federal level to make it harder for people to vote. It's easier to find instances of people getting hit by lightning than it is to find in-person voter fraud. It's a non-problem.
Wait, that's a great talking point when you guys see this come up on social media. It is easier to find an instance of someone being struck by lightning than finding an example of actual voter fraud. Use that.
And so it's a non-problem that's been used by years to justify this wave of laws making it harder to vote. To take on a non-problem that then makes it harder for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to vote. Here, we have this effort to talk about, again, a non-problem. Undocumented immigrants. It's already illegal for undocumented immigrants to vote in this country. This is not a problem that is actually showing up at our voting places. It's like that idea of voter fraud. It's very, very hard to find. And so to head off this non-problem, they're proposing this law that the Brennan Center and others have studied and said will impact the ability of millions of people to be able to vote.
Right.
to stop the pretend problem that even if it existed would be so minor. It really is using this, and by the way, demonizing undocumented immigrants is also wrong. This
Right.
is based on hateful things.
Well, we know what that's always about. That's if they can get us to point fingers at each
Right.
other, then we're not going to be pointing our fingers at them.
Um,
It's always like the 1% is the actual problem, but they want us pointing fingers at all the 1%
what's
stuff
so weird?
to
This
divide
isn't,
us.
yeah, and this isn't partisan, and it isn't just hitting one stripe. It's going to affect rural voters. It's going to affect married women who
Okay, wait, wait,
change their name.
wait. Pause.
I'm
We're
not
going to
supposed
get
to,
into the
right?
details
But
with Wendy. I want to
my
bring on
point
Wendy
is
for
it's
this.
going to affect millions of people,
Right,
not just some people that they think they're targeting, that they think they're
right.
targeting the problem. This is going to affect millions of people around the whole country, and everybody needs to know how bad it is. And one of the things is that it really is time, and it really will matter. I will tell you because I worked for a senator, and when you get calls at home, when you get calls into the offices, it really matters. It
From
turns
their
your day around
constituents.
from
Yeah,
their constituents. Um,
yeah.
do not shy away from making your voice heard on this one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to bring on Wendy, who is she's some like awesome title, like Vice President for Democracy or something like that. Like I want, like that's a cool
Well,
title.
we used to call her democracy czar, but that's out of vogue. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So Wendy from the Brennan Center, which is just a place that we're so lucky to have to turn to. Wendy, thank you for your work at the Brennan Center. It's just, I know that if it came from the Brennan Center, I can trust it. It's been so thoroughly vetted. Everyone who works there is just wants to help and to spread knowledge about our democracy. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you for coming on.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me, Katie and Jeremy. And I just also want to thank the thousands of people that are taking out time on a Monday evening to learn about what's happening to our voting rights and to do something about it. It's really inspiring.
Isn't it? I know. There's like we're gonna get to like 4,000 people on here. Okay, so first of all, I want to acknowledge everyone in the chat. You all are asking some really practical questions, like, you know, is this going to affect me in this situation, the other situation? Wendy has the details on this, so we are going to get through these questions for sure. And I also want to lead off this part of the conversation by saying, look, we're about to hear about a very horrendous, horrible piece of legislation. But I don't want to bury the lead here. Like, we can beat this. We can win this one. Okay.
Yep.
So just like keep that in mind here. So we're going to learn both of how horrible this is and what it practically means. And then we're going to kick its ass. Okay. All right. So first, Wendy, let's just start with what is the SAVE Act?
Great. So I just want to start by saying the SAVE Act is a vote suppression bill. And if it's enacted of just the historic context, it would be the first time in American history that Congress passed a law restricting access to voting. So I just sort of wanted to put that context there. That has never happened before. And it would principally accomplish two things: stopping millions of eligible American citizens from voting and completely upending our voter registration systems. And so I'm going to walk through the details now a little, but those are just sort of the big picture to keep in mind.
Awesome.
And so
Okay, but can you say that one more time? This would be the first time in history. Say that thing about Congress, because I think that's also
Congress passed a law restricting access to voting. We heard about all of the more and more inclusive, improving voter voting processes. That has been our trajectory. There's been lots of vote suppression in our history, but it's not been Congress doing it. And this would be the first time Congress got in on the game instead of to protect our voting rights and our constitutional right to have a say in our democracy, but to roll it back. And that is a dramatic change and really un-American. So wanted to start with that. The principal thing that the bill does, and it's not the only detail to remember, but the core of it is to require all Americans to present a passport, a birth certificate, and one of a few other citizenship documents before they can register or re-register to vote. So that's the core provision. There's more to it. And I just want to pause there because that alone would have a staggering disenfranchising impact on American voters. As Jeremy noted, it's millions. It's not just some millions, more than 9% of American citizens of voting age do not have citizenship documents readily available. That's 21.3 million people, American citizens, who would be excluded by this bill off the top. And that's not even getting into the married women name change folks. Like, that's just 21 million who just don't have these readily available at all. And this is not spread evenly across the population. Voters of color and younger voters are especially likely to lack those documents. And they're not just theoretical voters. These are actually people who are active. They are currently registered to vote or voting in the process. We've studied this. These are not just potential voters. These are people who already want to be part of the system that would be excluded from the system. And that's just the floor. So now let's get to the millions and millions of married women and some men too who've changed their names. So their current legal names don't match the names on their passports or birth certificates. That is also a staggering number. 79% of us have changed our names. And how many of us have paid $130 to update our passports? Keeping in mind that only 50%, or less than 50% of Americans have passports in the first place. So that's sort of just the citizenship document requirement. But that's not all there is in this bill. You also have to have a photo ID to accompany that matches it. And it's not just a one-time burden. It's going to require millions of Americans to prove our citizenship repeatedly. Every time we move or update our registrations, we have to do that again. And that's a lot of people. We've studied this, and it's tens of millions of people each election either register or move. So that would have to show their documents. Lots and tens of millions of people each year. So that's another thing it would do. I want to add
And
that.
I want to jump in here because we've gotten, Wendy, a lot of questions. So people say, all right, if I'm registered to vote, I voted in the last election and I live in the exact same place, that will not impact you, many other people in your community. Am I correct in that? However, if I move even, one neighborhood over, it's not that I moving out of state, anything like that. If I move anywhere, I need to update my registration or re-register. Is that right?
That's right. If you are currently registered to vote and you don't move, nothing's going to happen to you under the SAVE Act right away. When you move or re-register, that is when the requirement will apply to you. But there are actually millions and millions of people that register to vote each year. And as I said, tens of millions that move or register each year.
Right.
Tens of millions. So, and you look in like every 2-year period, that's like 40% of people that are currently registered have either registered for the first time or re-registered. That's like a large percentage of our electorate have.
Wendy, can I just ask you one question here? Because I have worked on voter registration many times. I know many of the people here have. We spend a lot of time, and we shouldn't have to do it, but making sure people can register to vote. What else would this law do to make it harder to register to vote in the country? Because just the technicality, it feels like this would impact many more millions of people.
Yeah, so that's what thank you for teeing up the next part of this, because it's not just people who don't have documents or who move. This is going to completely obliterate or upend most of our most popular forms of voter registration. That means registration by mail, online registration, automatic registration, voter registration drives. All of those are going to be completely destroyed because of the requirement that you actually have to show up in person to an election official to show your documents in person. That means you can't mail in your forms, you can't sign up online, you need to show up with those documents. And think about the rural voters with disabilities or older voters, like what that will mean, and keeping in mind all of the other things you're going to have to do to get all those documents together and then go to that election office. That's going to exclude millions of more eligible people, even if they have those documents accessible.
Okay. All right. And all you asking in the chat, yes, this recording will be available to you later. We'll post it on our YouTube. If you signed up via email, we will send out a recording of this to you this week. And also, you're asking, how do we stop it? We're going to be talking about that. And we also are going to be providing you, people are asking a lot about resources. We're going to be providing you all kinds of things to share on every social media platform that has a lot of these details to it. And we're also going to be giving you a link that is a click to call, take action, where no matter where you live, because it's important that you call your representatives and senators, but there will be a take action link with a script, everything teed up for you, ready to go. We're going to make this easy on you because we need to roar on this one. We need to make the SAVE Act just toxic, just incredibly unpopular. And we all have the power to contribute to that.
I'm looking at all the questions that are so good here, and they're all so relevant. And I'm thinking, how could we handle all of these questions at once? How about if we stop this act from being passed?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how about that? Instead, then we can render this whole conversation moot.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to address something that's come up a lot, Wendy, which is people are trying to understand, I've heard a lot, isn't it true that, yes, both Democratic and Republican women, for example, have changed their names? It's actually a higher percentage, apparently, of Republican women who change their names. So why is it? Sometimes that's confusing. People think, well, wait, if they're being partisan and they're trying to stop people from voting, wouldn't that impact Republican women too? Is it possible that this could hurt both voting blocs if you're looking through a partisan lens?
I mean, absolutely. This is going to hurt Democrats, Republicans, independents. It's going to hurt all Americans. That's the bottom line, regardless of their political affiliation. There are some aspects that might hurt Republican leaning constituencies more and others that are going to hurt Democratic leaning constituencies more. They are all wrong. It is just wrong to keep eligible American citizens from being able to vote and have a say over what happens to us in our communities. And I don't know whether anybody understood or thought through what impact this was going to have on married women when they put this bill together. But I will say it is one of many, many aspects of this bill that are just a complete mess. And it's not just voters who are complaining about it. Election officials are starting to grumble, like they don't like it either. It's going to be really impossible for them to administer this, and they don't understand what it means. And there's some crazy parts of the bill that actually make it a crime for election officials to register somebody if they didn't provide the right citizenship documents. And so that's going to really put a real chilling effect on any ability to be flexible or to let people register and vote, because people are going to be afraid to be hauled in and prosecuted, prison time, fines, just for not understanding what the bill required. So like there are so many ways in which this bill is a disaster.
Can we also talk about, a lot of people said, how do I talk about this with certain friends and family, especially ones who may identify as more conservative? Some of them have said, when I bring something like this up, they go, oh, come on, you're just being hyperbolic, that would never actually happen. They would just give the power back to the states, and I'm sure the states will, protect everybody. Like, simmer down, right? We hear that all the time. How would you suggest responding to that?
Well, you could listen to the election officials and the Republican election officials also, who are equally worried about this. And there are two states that actually previously passed a less onerous version of this show me your papers law. One is Arizona and one is Kansas. They were both weakened by court decisions. In Kansas, the former Republican Secretary of State actually has come out in public and has said, we tried this in Kansas. It didn't work here. It was a disaster. It wasn't outright for Kansas. It's not right for the rest of America. And I'd say in both of those places, like when those bills were first put in effect before the courts got into the action, tens of thousands of actual eligible Americans were blocked from registering and voting, tens of thousands. So like we actually have the receipts from the places where they tried it, and what they tried wasn't nearly as onerous and convoluted as what Congress has before it right now.
Okay, so I want to be super clear about how big this threat is. The Speaker of the House, said coming into this Congress that this is a huge priority for them. As far as I can tell, just so we all know where this is, basically, this could come up on the House of, on the floor of Congress, on the floor of the House of Representatives, really any day. We're kind of on a week-to-week basis here, really trying to, honestly, I think the public pressure is making a huge difference, the fact that they haven't tried to vote on it yet, right? But so where we are now is that it's got lots of sponsors. The legislation has lots of sponsors. It could come up on the House floor any day now. And some people are asking in the chat, though, how could we possibly win on anything, though? Can't they just like they've pushed through all of Trump's, nominees for the cabinet? How could this possibly be stopped? And the question is,
Well, the question, yeah, and this is, Wendy, I know you know how to win. What does a win look like here? How do we do it?
Well, there are many ways to win this. This is actually, and I will say that the actions that we're going to hear about that, ordinary people have been taking are actually making it clear, making this bill toxic. And one way to win is to make it so toxic that it doesn't even come to a vote. And we've already seen in not just in town halls, but in many places, even Republican members of Congress who were for this caught flat-footed, not knowing how to explain what they all the problems with the bill. And so as they start to hear from their constituents and from ordinary Americans how much they're concerned about the bill, this can really make a big difference. When the bill hits the Senate, at least how things currently stand, it needs 60 votes to pass. That's a lot of votes that it needs. And I think that it's really it's really possible to find at least 40 friends of democracy in that Senate, and maybe even more, that just don't want to see this happen. And I will say the House members also need to hear from you. We're going to hear about that soon too. And actually that's, we need a strong signal that this is not okay from America. And we need that from the House and from the Senate, but it's not as easy to pass this as people think, even if it's been listed as one of the top priority bills.
right. And to be clear, it has not passed in the House, this Congress. There's some confusion over that because it's passed in former Congresses, but it has to pass in the current Congress. It has not passed the House. So far, they have not brought it to the floor. I personally think it has a lot to do with if they thought they had the votes, if they thought that this was a political winner and not something toxic and bad politics, they would have already had it up for a vote. So we have to make it even more uncomfortable for them. So that would be a win if they just never bring it up for a vote. If they do bring it up in the House and it passes the House, we can stop this in the Senate.
Somebody wrote in the chat, simmer up in response to your simmer down. I like that.
Yeah, let's simmer up.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
I love it. Okay, Wendy.
I just want to add that, even if they try to fix the bill and say, hey, we found some workarounds, so married women, like it won't be as hard for them. Right now, it's much harder for people who've changed their names to vote. And it's not even clear that there is a process under the bill right now. It's still a fundamentally bad, toxic bill at its core. So even with those fixes, this bill is going to exclude millions of eligible American citizens, and for no good reason. And so it is not an immigration bill. It is not an election integrity bill. It is a vote suppression bill, no matter how they dress it up. And I just want folks to, not get relieved if there are some tweaks made to it. This is a fundamentally harmful bill.
Okay, Wendy, thank you so much. You've made it all so clear. We're going to make sure to be getting all kinds of resources. We're going to continue to work with the Brennan Center to make sure that everything that we're putting out is absolutely correct. Speaking of simmering up, so thank you so much, Wendy. And Jeremy, you need to put the kids to bed.
I know this is where I go from democracy to autocracy, and I put our kids to bed. But I just want to say thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Katie. Thank you. Let's go win this.
Let's win it. Okay, right. Now that we know we absolutely can. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, I'm so excited now to invite on Miss Emily Carter from Roswell, Georgia. You all might have known her from TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. There have been millions and millions of views on a video of Emily in Roswell, Georgia, going to her representatives, her U.S. congressman's town hall, and just in the last week or so, and standing up and asking him about the SAVE Act. And the video went absolutely viral because Emily knew her facts about the SAVE Act, and she left her congressman absolutely speechless. All he really had to share was a smirk. And so it just went crazy online. Red, White, and Blue posted it. I think there's way over like 3 million views across even just our platforms. And we added something to the end of the video where I came on and I said to our Instagram followers, if anyone knows this woman, have her contact us. I want to have her on and teach everybody else how to do this, because Emily, it was just a masterclass in how to stand up for your values at one of these town halls. And then y'all, by like the next morning, Emily was in our DMs being like, oh, hey, that was me. Hi, that was me. And so this was her. And so Emily, welcome. Welcome from Roswell, Georgia. We are so happy to have you on. How are you tonight? And how is this newfound fame?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And thank you. Thank you so much for finding me. And thank you to my friends for DMing me and getting me connected with you guys. And I also want to echo what Wendy said. I am just delighted to see this many people coming together on a Monday night. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, 100%. Well, we really believe that so many of us can do exactly what you did. And I just want to hear, like, Emily, is this like something you do like any night of the week? You're like, where's a town hall? Let me show up and see if I can pull off that congressman. Or was this the first time you've ever spoken out like that?
This was the first time I have ever spoken out at a town hall. So through my career, I have spoken at, county commissioner meetings or city council meetings or different things like that. But I've never gone as a constituent to a town hall before. And the only reason why I knew about the town hall was the 5Calls app. And I've seen a lot of people talking about it in the chat. So if you have not downloaded it, please do. So I found out about the town hall. I texted all my friends and then just made a plan to go, because kind of like how it is tonight, I just felt very strongly that I wanted to be somewhere with a community of like-minded people speaking out, doing something, and taking action. So I was super excited to go.
Okay. I love every bit of that. I love that you asked your friends, like, sometimes if you feel a little nervous, hit that group chat. You can probably find someone to go with you. Emily did.
Yeah.
And okay. And then here's also what I love. Emily, you actually took someone else's speaking slot because they weren't there. Like they were calling the name. They were calling the name. No one was standing up. The time was ending. You had been there forever waiting for your turn. And you were like, well, heck, if that woman, Ashley Brown, isn't gonna, which I know her name because it's in some of the videos, if she's not here, somebody's got to speak up. And so, like, what made you decide to do it? What made you decide to do that? Like in game time decision?
So I was just really fired up. So the first thing I'll tell you is that if you're going to go to a town hall, please get there early. So I got there the moment that the doors opened, and that's the only reason why I made it into the main room. And so the main room was completely full. The overflow room was completely full. And then we had like, I don't know, at least 100 people outside in 20-degree weather. And I want you all to remember that I live in Georgia. We are not prepared to stand outside in
No.
20-degree weather for 2 hours. So it was bananas that many people were so fired up in the 7th district. And so, yeah, so when we got there, you had to submit your name and submit your question in writing. And then they filtered through all the questions and would only ask the ones that they felt like. And so throughout the night, they would say, they would call it a name. And if that person didn't answer, they would say, oh, they must be in the overflow room. So I'm just going to stand up and ask the question for them. And you saw the non-answer that he gave me. He had been doing that all night for 2 hours. And so quite frankly, when they got to the point where they were like, there's only 10 minutes left, I was just so fed up and just wanted to say something that I turned to my friend and I said, the next time they call a female name, if she doesn't stand up in this room, I'm just going to get up and start talking. And so that's exactly what I did. So Ashley Brown, if you're out there, I am so sorry I stole your question, but I just had to. I'm sorry.
This is when we say sorry, not sorry. At least I'll say it for you. So, Emily, okay, last question for you before we bring on the congresswomen. My question is just what advice do you have for other women out here who are like, okay, she did that, but I don't know if I have those kind of guts. I don't know, what advice?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is you got to remember that they work for you. That's number one. You elected them, or even if you didn't elect them, like they are supposed to represent your voice. So it is on you to share your voice for them to represent it. Be prepared and be succinct. So I wrote out all of my question ahead of time, and that's probably the most difficult thing, is to pick one particular issue that you want to talk about. And I chose the SAVE Act. The next thing I'll say is to bring the red receipts. So most legislators, if they don't want to talk about something, that's the first thing they'll say is, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't read that. They just evade. And I came with, I know that you sponsored this bill on this date. So in theory, he should have read it. And then the other thing that I want to say is that when they push back on you, the very first thing that he wanted to do was push back on some minutia of, I don't think that 69 million people are going to be affected by this bill. Here's the thing. I don't care about the math. I don't care if 2 people are going to be suppressed or 400 people are going to be suppressed. All voter suppression is bad. So if they try to trip you up with like numbers or math or whatever, I just doubled down on, like, voter suppression is bad. Please don't do it. Please stop supporting it. And just kept hitting that message. And then the last thing, and you can see I'm getting a little bit flustered now. And that's the last thing I'm going to tell you is that, oh, good. It's okay to get flustered. And I did. And you could see that in the video where I read my question. And then after that, it was just a back and forth. And at one point, I was trying to say the word paper birth certificate, but I got stumped and I had a B word in my mind and I said paper ballot. And that's okay. You can flub your words. Just don't flub your message. Your message is the most important part. And do not feel like you need to stay silent until your message is so perfect that it can hold up to the strict scrutiny of the Supreme Court. Just get out there and start talking. And if you be yourself, if you're passionate, and if you're succinct, you're going to be absolutely amazing. That's it.
Can you all believe this woman in the chat? Let's just get a go, Emily. Yes. Can I see it? Go, Emily. Love Emily. We are so inspired by you. I think that we've created a lot more Emily Carters out there across America tonight. Look at this chat blowing up for you.
Love it.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. I
course.
think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and I can't wait to see all the things you're going to do next in Georgia. You are a leader, sister.
Awesome.
And I'm just so grateful for your voice. Thank you for being
Thank
with us.
you.
Okay, fantastic. All right, y'all, Emily Carter. Can you believe she'd never done that before? That was just so inspiring, and just really why the Emily's are why I started Red Wine and Blue. This is just, I love this stuff. I just shoot it into my veins. I'm so inspired. Okay, so I'm really excited to have, I know that we have Congresswoman Fernandez, who is chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus. Hi, Congresswoman. It's so good to see you.
Hello, hello. It's so great to hear all of this because we are going to win on this. And it is because of Emily. It's because of what are you doing here with all of your wonderful red wine and blue women doing this. And it's because they're doing really bad things and we are calling out their bad things. We are making sure that everybody knows about it. And that does make a difference. And that's how we win in Congress. That's how we win our democracy back. The Democratic Women's Caucus, this is a major issue for us because we know that this is part of a pattern. It's not, as somebody said earlier, it's not about immigrants voting. It's not about fraud in the system. It's making sure our voices are not heard. And we are not going to stand for that, because our voices must be heard. I want to make sure everybody knows the great news. The Democratic Women's Caucus is the largest ever. We have 96 women, Democratic women serving in the House. We have 96 Democratic women fighting for your voices, bringing your stories so that we can kill things like the SAVE Act, so that we can.
Is that the largest?
Yes, it's
is that the largest it's ever been? That is so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because
wow.
when women show up, when women win, we win.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us in particular, Congresswoman Fernandez, I believe that you heard Emily share her story. And by the way, hi, Amelia Sykes. Welcome, Congresswoman. We're so glad
to see you. Hi, everyone.
It's so good to see you. I'm so glad you could
We're not that far away from each other. Hi, girl.
Um, okay, so you heard Emily's story about how she stood up at Representative McCormick's town hall. Can you speak to, from the perspective as a member of Congress, like, I think some people could look at that and go, oh, it's just one constituent. It doesn't matter. Millions of views on social media, whatever. That's just social media. Who cares? Does it matter? Do these
It
moments matter?
Yes, it absolutely does matter. All of the actions that we take matter. We need to never let them belittle what we do. We need to always say that what we do is important in this moment, and remember that it is layering upon layering. And so I always talk about, might kind of go into this. We all, many of us were mothers. We heard Horton hears a who, right? For the last
I
who
love that
raises the
story.
voice and everybody hears it, right? We all need to be raising our voice. And so what you have seen in Congress is there have been the phones have been shut down because so many people have been calling about whether it's, Musk getting into our private accounts and Social Security and Treasury, whether it's about the Doge firings and all of these issues. It is adding up. The phone calls you make, the making sure you spread this with everybody, because maybe you're from New Mexico and we're an all turquoise blue delegation, right? But maybe when we spread what we're doing right now, you happen to have come from Tennessee. And so you're going to write your congressperson in Tennessee. You're going to show up when they refuse to do town halls. You'll look at in Representative Lawler's district, a bunch of people showed up outside, over 300, and said, listen to us, our voices count. And so every single action you take makes a difference. Last time we had every single Republican vote for this. And we need to remember every single Republican voted for this bill. But what was also important is we needed more of the explanation of what the bill actually did, so that they could not hide behind their lie that it is about immigrants voting, because immigrants don't vote. You've heard it earlier. There have been study after study. There is not an issue of undocumented or legal immigrants voting. It does not happen. This is about voter suppression. And they are suppressing, as you heard, mostly Republican women. But they are making it harder for people who don't have the money to get a passport, who don't have the money to go back and forth to their county districts, wherever they get their vital statistics to get the birth certificates. They are making it harder for us to participate in our democracy. Remember, that's what this is all about. It's not just about this single bill. It's about an effort to suppress our participation.
Congresswoman Sykes, I mean, I follow you on all the social media platforms, so I'm always seeing your stuff, and I would just been rooting you along because you've been posting a lot about the SAVE Act and letting people know what it does, saying, this is a real threat. And so I suspect you have been having a lot of conversations with your constituents about this. And so I'm just curious to hear how have those conversations been going? How do you talk about this? And what are you hearing back on the ground from them?
Thank you, Katie. So good to be here with you guys. Such a great group of folks who are always engaged. And I was listening in the background for a while until I got to my panelist status. So, and Emily, if you're still on the phone call, bravo to you. Thank you for your courage. And we can all be at Emily, or you can be at Amelia too, since our names are similar. But I would say, we knew that this bill was coming up because it was in the rules package. And so we've just been preemptively trying to get in front of these bill so people don't feel like we weren't responsive to what's important to the community. And so we did one of our House caucuses, WTF. So if you are not already a part of the WTF, it means Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just in case you were wondering. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we do an Instagram Live where we talk about something that is on top of mind. So we did our WTF one day about the SAVE Act, and we shared some information and wanted people to know what was happening in advance of this bill. So folks, know if they're going to make 5 calls, and I've been seeing things about the 5-call app, you can call me, but you already know where I'm going to be. So maybe that 5th call is someone else who you don't know where they're going to stand. And so, we were able to kind of like pull the curtain behind what this bill is because Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez said, this is all under we want election security and we want to keep non-citizens from voting, but it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote. And so this is a little bit of a trick, a lot of bit of a trick. And so letting people know that and how and why and putting it in very plain language without getting too wonky and using this language and that language, it's just saying, listen, if your birth certificate does not match your current name, then it is going to be very hard for you to register to vote. And I just got married less than 3 years ago. I did not change my name. And at this big age of mine, it'd be very, very difficult to change all of the things that I have. But a lot of women are different. I remember when my mom was getting her real ID, she went back 3 times. She had an out-of-state birth certificate. She had to go to the probate court and get an actually sealed marriage license. And, and now that was for a driver's license, but that's not even a right to vote. That's a constitutional right. So, I just wanted to make sure people knew what was happening so they could prepare and just be as outraged as we all are, because this is insane and it really attacks women in a way that clearly whoever drafted this legislation was not thinking about us. But now we're going to make them think about us.
Yes, we are. They are. And I would love to hear that too, like from your perspective, because this has been brought up in previous Congresses, but it hasn't been brought up yet. Do you feel the ground shifting on this issue? In terms of the SAVE Act, just more conversation about it. Do you, I think the goal would be for them to just be too scared to bring it up, that they see that this is not a winner for them. And does it feel different this time? And what do you think is most helpful for us to continue to move it in that direction?
So I am always an eternal optimist, but I also know that the desire for power from my colleagues sometimes overrides what I think is possible. And so even with the budget resolution, we're hearing Republicans saying that they weren't going to vote for this and they're holding out for this, and they actually cared about their constituents who were on Medicaid. And at the end of the day, power seems to win out, and the majority always goes towards that. So I would say the first thing is when people start saying that they're not voting for something because they're really concerned about their constituents and they're part of the majority, they're being squeezed hard, very hard by the president and other folks. So I would suggest, and I would say having people engage, having people call, it does make a difference. I know a lot of folks think that it doesn't, but it does. I would say, the interns and the junior staffers who are on the phone call, it's they're working for members, so just be mindful of that. But the volume does make a difference. Let us know what you're thinking. Emily said it very correctly. We work for you. I mean, you all elect us every 2 years or you don't. And one of the things that we should do is just be willing to hear you out and say thank you or make these adjustments. And sometimes we can, and most of the time we will. But here's the thing, and I think I heard Emily say this before, and I used to hear this when I was in the State House all the time. People would say, Amelia, you keep saying all these folks don't like this. Nobody's called me and told me that they didn't like this. And I'd say that's interesting. And sometimes they were telling the truth and sometimes they weren't. So now let's make sure that they are not able to get around it. So if you can, you post it, and if you tag members, that why they just can't say they never heard anyone say that they didn't like that.
Yep, absolutely. And so how do you see this playing out? And just to give us a sense of, what's your view? Do you think that, they have passed this in previous Congresses, but then it didn't come up in the Senate. Look, I'm with you, like kind of hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? So we're kind of trying to make this thing as unpopular as possible, but knowing if it hits that House floor, it could pass. And, so being ready though, to make that as difficult as possible with calls, being prepared to make sure that in the Senate, there are no defections and that those 60 votes don't happen. But I'd love to hear your kind of inside take.
So I think if it makes it to the floor, it likely passes. And here's the thing that we've been saying, the House majority is very slim. There's only 217 Republicans right now to 215. So that's pretty tight. And some of it is vacant, some of it's based on vacancies. So we really only need 3 Republicans to help hold the line. Just 3, just 3. So that makes it very easy because there's usually 435 when the House is whole, but just 3 people. I mean, that's just 3 people. So it should be easy to find 3 people who are somewhat on the fence who can help block it. But I know that, not I know, I have a feeling that if it makes it to the floor, they probably have whipped the votes. And that probably means some very, very strong arm wringing. You'll see if you ever happen to watch C-SPAN on a Monday night. They'll hold the votes open really, really long. But it is possible. It is 100% possible to stop this.
Yeah.
It has been slowed down because we were expecting it to come up earlier than this. And so I think
Yeah.
that's a sign. It's just one of those things that keep up the momentum. So again, we only need 3. We only need 3. That is not very hard. Out of 432 of us, we only need 3. It's possible.
I understand the assignment. I think we all do. Representative Sykes, you always bring the facts and the motivation and the optimism, and I appreciate that about you. Please keep informing us on, yeah. What's 3, 1? What are we doing?
1, 2, 3.
Yes. And so just keep us informed. We're going to stay in touch with you to make sure that we are taking all the right actions at the right time. And don't worry, everyone in the chat, we are about to give you the links to social media posts you can share on any platform to spread the word about this. And very importantly, a click to call website where you can just put in, where you live, and you're going to automatically be able to call both your representatives in the U.S. House, Amelia Sykes's colleagues, as well as your senators, because everybody needs to hear from this. And it is true that in all of these offices, they do keep track. Amelia said the volume matters. They keep track of how many constituents they are hearing from. So be clear that you're a constituent and be clear where you stand on this bill, and it will make a difference. Representative Sykes, thank you so much. Thank you for representing Akron so well.
Thank
All right.
you. Have a good night.
You all heard that this is possible to win. And I know that sounds unbelievable right now because of all that we've seen with all these cabinet nominees and everything else. But the rules are different in the US Senate for what it requires to pass legislation like this. Legislation that we have learned for tonight would represent the first time that Congress has ever actually suppressed, turn back our voting rights. So this is a huge opportunity for a win to stop this massive encroachment on our democracy. We not only can win this, we are already winning on this. If they thought they had the votes and this was a total winner for them, they actually already would have voted for this on the floor of the House, but they haven't. It's gotten delayed several times. So this is our assignment. Many of you were here with us in the lead up to the election last summer, and we were all learning about Project 2025. When we first started talking about Project 2025, no one had heard of it. We're talking it was something like 13% of Americans had even heard of it vaguely. We changed that number to the majority of Americans, and the more people heard about it, the less they liked it. That's our assignment. That's what we need to do with the SAVE Act. We need to make it be something everyone's heard of and nobody likes. So I'm going to pause the chat. And Drew, I'm going to ask if we can put in the chat and up here on the screen, we've got QR codes here on the screen. So you could put your phone up to the screen, and we've got one QR code that is going to take you to a social media toolkit that's like the easiest thing ever. You just do it and you put it up on your Facebook, your Instagram, or whatever. And this other QR code that's going to help you go and call Congress. It's a click to call. It makes it so easy. And then we also have here from Julie Womack in the chat, and we've paused the chat so everyone can get these links, is that you can click on this first one to go. If you're going to go call your senators and representatives, you can do it now and leave voicemails. You can do it tomorrow. You can do it every day of the week. And then also, we want you to share about the SAVE Act on social media with all your friends. Put it in your group chats. We know the power of group chats because we want to make this thing very, very unpopular. Yes, in terms of the votes, yes, they do need, they would require Democratic senators to get to those 60 votes in the Senate to pass it. We have seen Democratic senators not necessarily always vote on the side of voting rights and democracy. This is yet again a reason why we need to make sure that those who are pushing for this legislation don't get away with the lies of saying that this is somehow, just about trying to stop voter fraud, which doesn't exist. If they get away with those lies, that's how we end up having people vote for this who have no business voting against voting rights. That's why it's so important to spread the word and make sure that everybody knows what the SAVE Act is, that this would suppress the vote in an historic way, take away the right to vote for so many millions of Americans, including married women, and it would impact so many folks in our population. Red, White, and Blue has been making a lot of content and providing a lot of talking points about this. And all of that is in this toolkit that you can go in there, pick the posts, pick the videos that you like, that you think are going to work best with your friends, and share those. It's up to you. And you can put your own language on the posts as well to share it out best with your network. We have done this before at Red, White, and Blue. We have had thousands of people on a Zoom call. Go out and help make bad things very unpopular and make them more difficult to pass. That is our work that we can do tonight. We know we can do it because we've done it before. So we need to make the SAVE Act famous, famously unpopular. People need to know about it and know that it's bad. And that makes it all the more difficult for Congress to move the bill. If it does hit the House floor and they do pass it, which could happen, they do have the votes to do that, we need to make sure that it is dead on arrival in the Senate. So, do you all understand how we're winning and why we can win? It's 9:01. I'm going to let you all go out of respect for your time, and most of all, because I want to let you go and take action on the SAVE Act. I am so grateful of 4,000 people, of you all joining me here tonight. And please, we'll follow up in the email with all these resources as well. We are so grateful that you decided to spend time with us, and I will see you again next time. Let's hit the music, but make sure to leave those QR codes and the links up. Thanks, everybody. Good night.